What's going on, guys? Josh here at Trax RC, and in today's video we're going to be rebuilding, or at least starting the rebuild of my KRATON Success EXB. So for those of you that do not know, I acquired this RC car in a trade with my Stampede 4x4. That RC really had a lot of good parts on it, but it was still a 3S truck, and I just started to not really like it. And I reached out to this guy with the KRATON Success because I saw this car on Marketplace, and he was asking $375 for it as a roller, and I reached out to him like, hey, would you be willing to trade it for my Stampede 4x4? And he said yeah, and he even said he'll throw in electronics, and the electronics that he threw in was a 8S system. So I traded a 3S truck for an 8S car, so that's pretty cool. But this RC kind of has had a rough life, I think. The guy that I got it from, he was a second owner, and he treated it well, he said, but the body's pretty beat, and I already did some reinforcements to it. It's still 100% usable, but it just needs to be cleaned up a little bit. And then the car itself is pretty dirty, but I do want to just clean it all real good and make it look brand new, so then I can beat it up and not have to worry about if something's broken already from someone else beating it up. So that's what this little series is going to be about. I think I'm going to do 3 different video parts. We're going to do the front section, the middle, chassis, and then the rear end, and just clean everything up, replace fluids and stuff like that. So, and for the first part of this video series, I'm going to do the rear end. So let's go ahead and start ripping this thing apart. Alright, so the rear end is off, and now we can see the inside of the rear diff, which I have not seen yet, and it looks pretty good. It spins nice and smooth. I'm not seeing like any metal shavings or anything like that, and all the teeth look to be intact from what I can tell right now. The only questionable thing is the fluid is like brown. There's definitely some grease in there, but it definitely needs to be serviced, so we're gonna work on taking the rest of this off and cleaning these parts. Alright, so I got everything apart and laid out on the workbench, and now the most rewarding part comes in where we get to clean everything. Now let me just say that the diff case was probably the most frustrating thing to take apart just because the guy didn't clean it. Look at all that, I couldn't even tell where the bolts were. So the guy told me that he replaced the rear diff. Apparently he blew it out. The inside, when he replaced it, he definitely left all the old grease and dirt and just threw some Lucas Red and Tacky in there. Really isn't the right way to do it. And another thing to mention is with the hubs right here. To get them off, there's a set screw that goes into the inside of the stub axle, and I actually had to use a little mini torch here to heat up that Loctite and to pull it off. It just makes it easier. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And now to clean all this, I'm going to show you what I do, and I think it works pretty well. Alright, so what I do is I fill up the sink with some warm water and dish soap, and then you're going to want an old toothbrush. This is the one I use for all RC stuff, so obviously scrub away, get in every little crack and crevice, and it doesn't take much. But what I like about using dish soap is that it is also a degreaser, so it gets rid of all the grease and anything like that that may be stuck on the parts. Shock tower's done, and I noticed that it is slightly bent. It's not anything that I'm going to be concerned about really, but just thought I'd point that out. Now, one thing I'm going to recommend with the diff case, you could kind of see just all the extra grease on that's like kind of caked to the edges. I'd grab some paper towels, just try to wipe as much of that out as you can because it's going to be a pain to get all of it out with the brush. The brush is more for like the fine debris, not the big clumps of old grease. Alright, so everything that I cleaned is on this table, but what I like to do is spray everything down, at least the plastic stuff, with WD-40 and let it soak in because it brings shine back to the plastic, but it also adds a little bit of flexibility to some of these parts. Alright, so all the WD-40 is sprayed. I avoided inside of the diff cases just because I want those to be bare plastic, no WD-40. So now over here on the workbench, I'm going to work on cleaning up some of these other parts like the hubs. I want to get all the dirt off there. And then each individual screw, I'm going to go through, get the dirt out of each one, clean up these pins a little bit. They're a little bit grimy. Same thing for the drive shaft. And to do that, I'm just going to use a toothbrush. It's still wet. It's the same one that I used earlier. I'm also going to go get an old rag to wipe parts down with, and I'm not going to touch the diff yet because I want to do that last. Alright, so all the parts on the front end are officially cleaned, and then off to the side of the workbench we got all of these parts right here that are all clean, and they look really good. Like, I haven't seen them in a few days because I was waiting for parts to come in, which I'll get to in a minute, but they look really good, super clean. I'm pretty happy with the results of them so far. It's going to look really good once they're all installed. But back to the bench over here, I got all of these parts all cleaned up. I did not do the bearings just because I have a whole bearing kit. In my KRATON bin, I got this kit right here. This was given to me along with some extra parts by the previous owner. So as I rebuild the whole thing, I'm going to be swapping out every single bearing, even if they're good. I mean, like this one right here, that feels really solid. Actually, all of them in the rear end feel pretty good, but it's just that maintenance thing. I mean, I got the part, may as well throw them all in so I don't have any issues in the future, hopefully. Now, the only thing that I have left to do is take apart the rear diff, fill it with new oil, clean everything. I'm going to be using 30,000 weight diff fluid. I was really unsure about what diff fluid to put in here because on my 1/10 scale bashers, I usually run 30,000 weight in the front and the rear, but I was reading on some ARRMA forums and a lot of people run like 10 or 20,000 weight in the rear, and then they put like 30 to 40 up front. I thought that people would recommend like a 50,000 weight for the front and the rear, but I don't know, people just run it really light for some reason, so I figured I'd just go with what I'm used to, and I do think that's gonna be fine though. Plus these are an LSD, so I think that they might be on the maximum setting. I'm not sure how effective it is because it's just little plates that you flip around. But anyways, let's start ripping into this rear diff and cleaning everything. Alright, so a little bit of an update here. The seal is ripped, so I went ahead and put a new one in there. So I'm starting to think that this rear diff is not brand new because the guy said that it was, but clearly because the seal was ripped and there was barely any oil in it, it definitely was not new. I mean, everything's in good condition other than the seal, so we just gotta fill this up with fluid and then we'll be on our way here. Alright guys, so the rear end is all put back together. One thing that I want to point out is that no, I am not touching the shocks. I know that in the first video that I made with the KRATON 6S, when I first showed it to you guys, I said that I wanted to tune them up a little bit. Like, this one's really loose for some reason. I wanted to figure that out. And while I think I still may want to do that, it's just not something I want to do right now because they still work. I mean, they definitely have oil in them and they don't leak, which is a big plus. If they leaked, I feel like it'd be a different story, but I mean, as of right now, I'm fine with how it is. But I mean, other than the shocks, everything on here has been taken apart, cleaned up, and it's ready to go back on to the car. So in the next part of the KRATON rebuild series, I'm going to be touching the front end. We're going to strip that down and do the same thing that we did on the rear. I'll be sure to put a link to this playlist for the rebuild series right up here so then you guys can follow along. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like, share it with others so I can grow my channel. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Aside from my soul.